Hi, and welcome everybody to the fifth edition of That's Some Crazy Shit with Kelly and James. My name is Kelly Morgan, and my co-host, my brother from another mother, is Mr. James Baez. What's going on, dude?
What's up, sister?
You know what? It has been an interesting week. I know that we had said on That's Some Crazy Shit that we weren't gonna talk about politics, but can I just say Mike Pence's fly? That's all I'm gonna say.
I watched that real fast, and I couldn't stop fucking laughing, man.
You know what's crazy about it? You know what's crazy about it? It's not the fact that a fly landed on this guy. It's not even the fact that the fly sat there they clocked it a minute, right? It's the fact that it came across my internet feed as breaking news.
Breaking news.
That is some crazy shit to me, and that's all I'm gonna say about that. That was just what I deem the internet will not be defeated. And
no, well, we throw something out there real quick, kind of tie it to the paranormal. Flies have always been tied to Satan and evil.
Or the unclean. Flies have always been yeah, you're right. And I don't want to go there, but
I just throwing it out there.
It was just some crazy shit to me. At any rate, we are here again. This is our fifth podcast. We are going to move forward. We're going to press on. All right. So those of you that have been listening to us for the past 4 or 5 weeks, thank you. Thank you so much. We are more than happy. James, kind of tell everybody, if you've never listened to us before and this is your first podcast, welcome for starters. And then, we're going to go into like why we're doing the podcast, kind of what of our objective is, our mission statement.
All right, so the objective of our podcast is kind of bring awareness to a variety of different subjects and topics that intrigue us, that make us want to think and have discussions, and hopefully they'll intrigue you enough to get involved with what we're doing. If there's something that you don't know, that we bring up a subject, and if you don't agree with what we're saying, do some research and let us know. Just say, hey, send us an email and we'll give you that address. And hey, man, tell us your experience or let me know what's going on. These are going to be things that you don't talk about. At least I don't talk about at work or most social circles. Because when you do, people tend to, ridicule. So we want to give you a safe place and, learn some stuff and share your stories and, get interested about it.
Yeah, stuff that we deem crazy shit, and there's a lot of strange and crazy shit in the world, and we're not saying that we're experts and that we have the answers. We just like to talk about this stuff, right? And so what we thought we would do is we would bring some written information or some theory. We're actually going to do some research because of, like I said, we're not experts. And then, our opinion, what we think, we'll discuss it. We want to keep it open. We want to keep it positive. And there are ways that you can connect with us through social media. So we have grown since first podcast to fifth podcast as far as how you can get at us. So we've got email, we've got Gmail, that's some crazy shit podcast at gmail.com. That's a great way to reach us, especially if you want to share your story. If you want to come on and be a guest and, tell us your story, that's a great way to reach us. We're also at Twitter at That's Some Crazy Shit. We're on Instagram at That's_some crazy shit. And we're also on Facebook at K and J's Crazy Shit. So there's all types of ways that you can reach us. We are legit, James. Look at us with the social media. That's more social media than I have as an individual, right? So that's a lot.
I don't even go to Twitter.
All right. So this week we are doing witches.
We are doing witches, yes.
And haunted and strange places, right?
And this is keeping up with our Halloween themed month.
Right. So we've got a whole creepy theme for Halloween. So next Saturday, the 17th, we'll be doing ghost and tarot card psychic readers. The 24th of October, we'll be doing urban legends and curses. Ooh, that's going to be a good one. That's going to be a really good one. I like urban legends, so I'm happy to see. I'm excited to see what you're going to come up. And I found a lot of stuff on curses. It's some interesting shit. Can't wait. And then on Halloween, we'll do werewolves and magic and rituals. Ooh, that's my creepy Halloween music.
That was creepy. Yeah, that was
creepy. So James is going to kick us off. And he is going to kick us off with Cryptid Creatures. Cryptid Creatures is brought to you by Chef Bella B LLC. Chef Bella B LLC offers personal and private chef services, along with authentic spices and sauces available on her website. Chef Bella is located in Aurora, Colorado. She cooks a couple days, 2-3 days a week at East Fax Tap on Colfax. Chef Bella B Kitchen is what it's called. You can see her there on Monday, Friday, or Sunday. She has wings, fries, bar food. Her website is chefbellabkitchen.com. And she's also available at Chef Bella B, and that's on Instagram. If you haven't heard about Anchor, let me tell you, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free, and free's always good. There's these really great creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. And then Anchor will take your podcast and distribute it for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need in one place to make a podcast. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It's everything you need to make a podcast. So, with no further ado, James, what have you got today for Cryptid Creatures?
All right, Miss Kelly. So we are going to talk about witches today.
Witches, right on.
And so during my research, I went back and found that one of the earliest references to witches was in the Bible, the book of Samuel. And that was written between like 950 BC to like 750 BC. So in that span. And so the story goes that King Saul went to a witch to summon a dead prophet to help him in battle. And so the witch does this. She brings about the prophet, and the prophet says that King Saul and his son were going to die. And then the story goes on that the son was killed in battle, and King Saul ends up committing suicide.
So let me ask you a question. So he went to this person that he knew was a witch, correct?
Yes.
And so,
and I find it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I find this interesting because up until the 1400s, witches weren't considered bad.
Really?
And so, I can see where they would go in some of these people. I think it's interesting because some of these people, if you look at these women, most of them were, one was shaman and medicine women. In any other culture, they probably would have been revered.
Interesting. So, did you find out just overall what it means, the definition, I guess, of witch? What exactly is a witch?
Oh, excuse me. So the definition I found was someone who uses magic to portend the future or to try and influence things. Like if you wanted a better crop, or if you wanted a good health, you would seek one of these women out. But I tend to think that most of the time they were, like I said, older women who had maybe homeopathic skills and talents. So, when you talk about witch, everyone thinks about the magic, the bad magic and stuff. And like I said, that didn't come about until the 1400s.
So tell me some stuff that you found on witches. Tell me some witch stories, James.
Okay, so there's a ton of witch stories, really. I mean, literally. Some I found interesting were in Europe. There was, just like they had the Salem witch trials here, they had the same type of thing over in Europe. And one of the stories was that one of the town's women was accused of making her neighbor's pigs sick and cursing his cotton crop. So they put her on trial, and this is what the crazy stuff is. Yeah. So the trial to determine whether she was a witch was they bound her hands and feet and threw her into a body of water.
And this is what you were saying last week about water, right?
Right. So they throw her into the body of water, and if it's, if the water accepts her, she was not a witch. Okay, I don't understand the logic behind this, but we'll go into this later too. So she actually ends up floating. So she's a witch by their definition. And this is what I thought was interesting, because usually that's a death sentence. Right away they're going to burn her or hang her. But they actually end up putting her in prison for 8 years and then releasing her. And this is one of the very few stories that I found where a woman or a person accused of witchcraft that was actually found guilty because of these incredibly accurate tests and let go. Most of them, like I said, it's death by hanging or burning. Or you die because you drowned because you weren't a witch.
Yeah. Okay.
See, now that's some crazy shit right there, man.
That is some crazy shit. All right. Tell me another one.
Okay, so then you fast forward to the Salem witch trials. Okay. And in the 1600s in Salem, it started with 2 young girls, and they started having seizures, convulsing, and having delusional thoughts and stuff like that. Okay. So during this time, they decide that they are going to accuse an elderly townswoman of being a witch. Okay. And this woman, by all accounts, was, upstanding citizen, went to church, God-fearing, the whole deal. Okay. But now that she has these 2 kids saying that she's a witch, they put her on trial, and And, like I said, they end up hanging this old woman. And that set off the Salem witch trials.
So what happened to the two kids?
Well, the story goes on that they actually continued to accuse people, and it wasn't just these two girls. It became almost a gang of young girls. And they started accusing different people of witchcraft and being witches and being in league with the devil. So then it sparks all these trials. And it was interesting because it really didn't seem to be a problem until one of the people that was accused was more of a well-known woman, and her husband, he was all into the witch trials, before. But once his wife was accused, then it was a different story. And so that's when it came about, well, maybe we need to, look more closely what's going on. But it makes me wonder, they think the original two girls were under the influence of a fungus that causes hallucinations and seizures.
So the two girls that were having the seizures and the convulsions weren't accused of being witches. They accused the elderly lady of doing something to them. So she was a witch. They weren't witches, correct?
Correct.
And so what did they do to her?
Well, they put her on trial and they hung her.
They hung her. They hung her or they burned her? They hung her?
They hung her. But like I said, the two ways that they dispatched of these witches was to hang them or burn them.
Now, how long did the Salem witch trials last?
Oh, I believe it was about 18 months. And then things kind of died down. And like I said, it didn't seem to be
they were running out of people to accuse, right?
Well, like I said, and it wasn't a problem until one of the more well-known people got accused, and then they were like, because it's mostly elderly women who weren't very well off, and so they're easy victims. Who's going to stand up for these old women? They don't care. But there was two dozen witch trials, and they took place between 1626 and 1730.
It's a long time to be having some witch trials. It's a lot of trials. It's a lot of witch trials.
And so
probably nobody in those 2 dozen was found not guilty. Because if you weren't a witch and I throw you in the water and you drowned, you're not a witch, but you're dead anyway. So,
right.
And if you live and you float away, then we're gonna go catch your ass, burn you or hang you, right? So
you're a damn witch.
Either way, I'm saying nobody in these witch trials was found not guilty and walked away.
Yeah, and walked away. Yeah. Another one they would do is they would place a person between 2 pieces of wood, and then they would start stacking heavy boulders on them.
Because a witch can withstand that, right?
And then, you get a couple 100 pounds. Well, I don't even know how many pounds it would take to suffocate you. Yeah, but so once you get suffocated, oh yeah, he's good. He's not a witch. Well, you got 500 pounds of shit sitting on your chest. You're not alive either.
That's what I'm saying. You're not walking away. The being accused and going to trial was a death sentence, whether you were a witch or not. And the thing is that if they did actually kill real witches, we'd never know because they killed everybody who was accused.
Well, I guess it's one of those, sacrifice you as a witch now and ask questions later, I guess.
Right. Tell me some more. You got any more?
Well, then we come up to how we were talking about how ridiculous these trials were. And Ben Franklin actually called him out on this. And he he came out and he said, this is a crazy thing. They're having a witch trial in New Jersey, and that's when he came up and said, how is it that you're going to throw a person into the raw water and they drown, but they're not a witch? And let's say they float, and like you said, we're going to hunt them down. That's ridiculous. So he's the one who started to try and turn this stuff around. And then after that, laws started to be passed where you had to have, I guess, quote unquote evidence, to help protect people. I mean, let's say I'm a little kid, and I don't know, you tell me to get off your lawn or something, and I'm like, hey, fuck that, man. He's a witch.
Well, but witches are just girls, right? Witches
no, not all of them.
So you said there were male witches?
Yes.
Not warlocks?
Well, male witches are warlocks.
But they were called witches.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right.
And then it even got to the point where, I forgot to mention, they had a book to help you determine if someone was a witch. Okay, and it was called the Malleus Maleficarum.
Okay, it's a lot.
And it was in the mid 1400s when this came out, and it came out and it was trying to tell you the various behaviors a witch would have. So
who wrote the book?
It was written by a monk. Oh, I forgot. Let me see if I can find his name now. Two respected German Dominicans, and I don't have a name for them.
Interesting. So, what were they? What were the traits of being a witch? Do you know?
Okay. Now this is very specific. Okay.
Okay.
Single women. Who are widows.
Wow.
Or other women that live on the margins of society.
What does that mean?
So if you're an old lady who lives out in the woods because you don't like people and you practice homeopathic medicine, you're a witch.
Oh. And if I'm single because my husband died, doesn't matter how he died. The fact that he's no longer with us.
I would assume they probably mean even single after the appropriate age for marriage back then. Who knows,
Oh, man.
Hey, man, you're a hot chick, and I'm a scumbag, and I say, let's hook up, and you're like, no, you're a scumbag. Witch!
Wow.
She's a witch.
What else does it say?
So, and I found this interesting too. It really hit its peak between the 1400s and the 1700s. So for about 300 years during the Dark Ages. And the more I think about it, or I read about this and did research, it was a dark age, man, because this is when vampires came about in a bad way. Witches were now bad. Werewolves were now bad. And it was all during the Dark Ages, man. I mean, that was it would have been a scary time to be alive. I mean, you got witches, vampires, anything running around, your field doesn't produce corn, it's because your neighbor's a witch. I mean, it must have been a crazy time if you let your thoughts go away.
Yeah. It must have been a crazy, especially if you were a single woman, God forbid.
No shit.
My God, we've come a long way. We've come a long way.
We've come a way.
We've come a long way.
We have a long way to go, but we've come a long way.
All right. What else you got on witches besides the Salem witches?
All right. So then when you get into the more modern times, you start to get into Wicca. And Wicca, they stay away from anything that's considered evil. And so now it's kind of changed back, where before I remember in the 80s and 90s, you had, people who would cast spells and curses, like you're going to talk about and stuff, and they did it for evil purposes, And now it's kind of swung back the other way, where their motto is to harm none, and they want to live in peace with people, in harmony with people, in nature.
And Wicca would actually be considered to be a religion. And if you want to look at it from a metaphysical standpoint, they use energy, be it from the earth or water or air or fire. They use the elements to help basically manipulate energy, right? As they did, they say, back in the day, which would be your quote unquote spell. Any spell is conducted to manipulate something or someone. Like you said, I need a spell for good crops, or carry this amulet for good luck, or whatever, right? So, yeah, I get it.
And so that's where they are at now. They do the more positive things. So things are starting to swing back, I think, towards, I think time is like a pendulum and a clock. At one point it swings so far to one way, and then it swings so far back the other way. And I think it's starting to swing back towards the positive when it comes to, a lot of this stuff anymore, to be honest.
I would say that today, somebody who practices being a Wiccan would be probably a little bit more accepted than they would have maybe 20 years ago.
Oh, for sure.
Right? So yeah, I can see where you're saying that things are changing. I mean, like I said, to each his own, different strokes. I just find it very interesting that now, and then you see movies, right, about witches all the time, that have always been, look at The Craft, and they're rebooting that movie. So their witches have been portrayed. You're right. You've got the black hat on the broom, evil, big nose, and now you've got, other types of witches. So, yeah, interesting.
So, yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. And like I said, the negative vision of a witch really didn't, come around. I know we don't like to talk about religion, but, it was the Catholic Church that kind of started to demonize these pagan religions. And that's when things started turning negative. Witches were, evil, and they were ugly, and they did bad things, So it's interesting how things like that can happen. But there are still countries where, if someone's accused of being a witch, shit, the society will hack them up.
Wow. And that's really too bad. That's too bad. Anything else on witches, my friend?
Well, what do you need?
No, I'm just asking.
I did some research, though, I'm down.
Anything else?
To be honest, not right now, Kel. I think that's all keeping up with the witches for now.
Cool.
I hope that answered some questions.
Yeah, I found it very interesting, especially how I just kind of like how you didn't go into the stereotypical witch stuff, how you kind of talked about from a kind of a different standpoint from witches, and where they first came from and all that good stuff. So, James, I always appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much. We are moving on. We are going to move on. No problem. So coming up now, I'm going to talk about, I guess my thing's called my crazy shit, my topic. My topic is haunted places, and it is brought to you by Bright-Headed Publishing, LLC. Bright-Headed Publishing is a small publishing company that is out there. Their goal is to help others realize their dream of being a published author. You can visit their website at www.bright-headedpublishing.com. They're on Instagram at BHPLP. No, I'm sorry. I just totally messed that up.
MIC.
QUBCD. No, I don't know. It is actually at BHPLCC. That is Bright Headed Publishing LCC. They're also on Facebook, and they just wanted me to let you guys know they're going to actually be starting their own podcast doing audiobooks. It's going to be a podiobook podcast. So that is coming soon, right? So I've got haunted and strange places, and there are a ton of haunted and strange places around the world. And so I really, we could talk about this like all day. There's so many, but there are 4 that I really enjoyed learning about. And I tried to pick places that I didn't know anything about so that it was new to me as well. So I've got 4 that I had really never heard about that I'm going to bring to you. So hold on for just a second. We are going to start with Myrtle's Plantation.
And this is a scary ass place.
And this is what I was reading. Now, this place is supposed to be like one of the top terrifying places in the world, right? And it's supposed to be haunted. If you're not familiar, Myrtle's Plantation is in St. Francisville, which is northwest of New Orleans. It was built in 1796 by General David Bradford. And it is 10 acres. And when he built this property, he lived there for several years by himself, and traded hands throughout the years. It went to different people. So the hauntings are allegedly that 10 people have been murdered in the mansion itself. However, there is no record of 10 people being murdered. There's only record of one guy being murdered in the house. And this guy lived in the house. He was an attorney. His name was William Winter. And William Winter lived in the house from 1865 to 1871. He was an attorney. He was shot by a stranger, or legend has it, I should say, he was shot by a stranger. And when he was shot, he staggered back in the house, and he died climbing the steps, right? And he dies on the 17th step. He gets
How many more did he have?
I don't know. I couldn't find it. I thought about that too, but he died at number 17.
That wasn't
right.
I'm sorry.
He died on step 17, and story goes that to this day, that visitors and employees can hear his dying steps. Okay, so that's the one guy that there's a record of somebody actually being murdered in the house. But legend has it that there are at least 10 people being murdered. The most famous legend is the legend of Chloe, right? And Chloe was a slave that was owned by the owners of the time, which were Clark and Sandra Woodruff. And there's a couple of different stories. One is that Clark Woodruff pressured her into being his mistress. And the other one is that she listened, through the keyholes to him talking about his business, and heard stuff she wasn't supposed to hear. So there are 2 stories. One, she was the mistress. Number 2, she was ear hustling and listening to shit she shouldn't have been listening to.
It's probably a little bit of both.
Either way, they caught her and they cut off one of her ears. Right? And so
damn.
Right? So,
damn.
And so she wore a green turban to cover it up. So she got revenge. Legend has it that what she did was she took some oleander leaves and she boiled them down and she made a cake. And she did it for one or two reasons. Either one, to gain favor as the mistress again, getting revenge. And then number two, that she would poison them and then redeem herself by curing them. Either way, it backfired because Sarah and the two daughters, so the mom and the two girls, their two daughters, ate the cake and died. She was then hung, Chloe was hung by the other slaves and then thrown into the Mississippi River, either as a punishment or to escape punishment. The other slaves threw in there to escape punishment from Clark Woodruff, because they didn't want to get caught harboring her. So, funny thing about this whole story is that there's no historical record of any of this.
Well, can I just interject?
You can.
That would make sense, because why would you keep records of a slave dying like that, to be honest?
Well, there are no records of the Woodruffs ever having a slave named Chloe or any slaves.
Okay then.
Okay, the legend says that Sarah and her two daughters were poisoned, but the daughter, Mary Octavia, survived well into adulthood. And then it says that Sarah and James and another Woodruff weren't killed by poisoning, but they got yellow fever. So there are different stories about this slave named Chloe, but people have definitely said they have seen the ghost of her with the green turban.
Yeah,
okay?
I've seen pictures.
Yeah, so there are other legends about this place. The one that I like is that it's built on an ancient Indian burial ground.
As they all are.
Yes, they all are. And that the ghost of a young Native American woman has been reported. And then there are accounts from the Civil War where the Union soldiers came in and they ransacked the house. And legend has it that the three of them were killed in the house. I don't know how they were killed, just that they were killed in the house. And that there's a blood stain in the doorway that they can't mop away. Right?
I heard they tried to sand it off.
They've tried to sand it off. They tried everything. They cannot get rid of this blood stain. It's also said that the spirits of Sarah Woodruff and her two children from the Chloe story were trapped. Their spirits are trapped in a mirror. Usually back in the day, they would cover up mirrors after you would die, but there was one mirror that wasn't covered, and that's where their spirits are trapped, and you can see their handprints sometimes from time to time.
That is crazy shit.
Right? People hear that they hear staggers or walks or crawls up to that 17th step. Yep. And that guy, that's where he died. Right? Some say that he died climbing the steps. Some say that he died in the arms of his wife. Right? And then there's also one about a young girl who died in 1868. Despite being treated by a voodoo practitioner. She appears in the room from which she died, and it's been reported to practice voodoo on the people who are sleeping in that room.
The little girl?
Yes. Ooh.
That is kind of freaky.
That is all I have on Myrtle's Plantation. I thought it was very interesting. And it's been on Ghost Hunters.
Oh yeah.
It's been on even Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack back in the day. It was
it's
on there as well.
Scary shit. That is some crazy shit. Look into it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a really scary place. Okay, so the second one that I found interesting that you actually told me about that I didn't know anything about was Hauska Castle. And this place is a trip, okay? So Hauska Castle is on a help me out, James.
Czechoslovakian?
Thank you. Cliff top. It's a castle, and it has all types of legends and myths around it. So it was constructed in the 13th century between 1253 and 1278 during the reign of Ottokar II of Bohemia. See, I did some research. Okay.
Now, okay, real quickly, what are castles used for?
Well, isn't that where the head dudes would live and for protection?
For
right?
protection. Okay.
For protection. Okay.
Okay.
So it sits on like this high hill. So when you first look at it, it looks like a pretty normal castle. However, many of the windows of the castle are fake. That's the first thing. A lot of the windows are like just facades. They're just glass panes behind sturdy walls. It's a trip. It has no water source, no kitchen, no occupants. For years after it was built, nobody lived there. And the location, it's a remote area surrounded by thick forests, swamps, and sandstone mountains. It has no strategic value, right? No
So
reason.
all these
Right.
reasons not to even
Right.
exist.
It's on no trading route. It's just like, so why? They say it is believed that this castle is built over the doorway to hell, right? There's a big giant hole, which is like the pit to hell, and creatures crawl out of this thing. And so they have built this castle over this pit to keep these creatures out. And the chapel, it does have a chapel. It was built directly over the bottomless pit in order to seal in the evil
Yep.
and to keep the winged demon creatures from coming out. Visitors claim to hear scratching of the creatures from the lower floors at night, trying to claw their way to the surface. Others claim to hear screams. Others claim to hear screams. So check this out. So I was like, okay, this is, so I don't know why anybody would want to go try to see like the pit of hell.
Yeah, hey, Kat, let's go.
I'm not going, but I will, and I will tell you why. So when I was looking at research, I found out that when they started to build this thing, they took the village that's nearby, they had prisoners, and that, if you were sentenced to death, they would pardon you if you agreed to be lowered down into this pit, right?
I heard about it.
For a few seconds, and then they'll bring you back up. And if you
Tell us what happens.
I will, but if you agree to do that, we will not kill you. So it's very important, right? So they take this guy. The first guy was tied up, and he was lowered into the hole for a few seconds. And then he disappeared into the darkness. Shortly after, he began to scream in horror. They pulled him back up, and he was a young man when he went down the hole. When he came up the hole, he looked as if he had aged 30 years. They said his hair was white and that his skin was extremely wrinkled. They said he screamed. He screamed so much and was so disturbed by whatever he had saw that he went to an insane asylum where he died 2 days later from unknown causes.
Fear. He was scared to death.
And this is the interesting thing, is that it was also had the interest. This castle was an interest of Nazis. They wanted to harness the powers of hell themselves, and the Nazis were big time into the occult.
Oh, they were.
Right?
They were.
And so they specifically chose Hauska Castle in order to figure out how to harness, even though that, they say that it's haunted. That is a scary place. I couldn't really find anything much on it because I don't know anybody that's been down to the pit and has come back besides this guy who only lived 2 days after he came back. And that was the only account I could find of anybody that had actually been down the hole.
Let's go.
I'm not going. That is a scary place. So that was one that I had found. Now, another one that I had found that I thought was really scary, and I had actually found a lot of information on this, was Hoia Baciu Forest in Romania, and it is known as the Bermuda Triangle of Romania. So you've got, the whole thing with Transylvania and Dracula, but this forest covers 250 acres. It's freaky because there's been a lot of strange events there, a lot of stuff. First of all, the trees don't grow straight up, right? They bend and they spiral, almost as if their limbs are reaching out to touch you. And they say that it's even weirder that the trees turn in a clockwise direction, right? So trees don't grow like normal trees. They've also got a lot of dead vegetation, and they don't know why. They have no idea. It's kind of a dead zone. There's a dead zone in the forest that's almost a perfect circle.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Where absolutely nothing grows, no vegetation, and the soil has been sampled, and it's unknown why nothing grows there. So the forest is a hotbed of freaky and unexplainable stuff. There's a legend. They say that some people believe that it's a portal, right, into another dimension. There's legends of there's accounts of people going in there and losing track of time, not knowing how long they've been in there. There's one legend surrounding the forest where a young girl entered and was lost for many years. She was supposedly reemerged from the forest 5 years later, appearing unaged and unable to remember where she has been. There's another story.
Did you have a year when that happened, Kel?
I do not. I couldn't find it. It's just a legend that they say. So it's a legend. Yeah, I couldn't find any more info because I did look. There's another legend that the locals say that there was a shepherd who had a flock of 200 sheep. He went into the forest with his flock and was never seen again. His sheep or their remains were never found.
And
so
that's a big flock of sheep, man.
Right now, there's the forest didn't really become a place of alien sightings until 1968, and there was a military technician named Emil Barnia, and he was in the forest with his girlfriend and a couple of friends in August in 1968, and they saw like a weird silver disc in the sky, and they took a picture of it.
Yeah, and this is a good picture.
Yeah, and they said that they saw the UFO for about 2 minutes, and they were published in local papers and stuff, but people were skeptical. Some people, thought it was weather balloons, or They couldn't find anything that had been in that area that day. They couldn't find anything.
Yeah, it was not a weather balloon.
Right. So there are other experiences of people who say that they just walk in the forest and they have symptoms. They have anxiety, or they feel like there's somebody watching them. Others have come out and have like scratches or bruises, and they have no idea where they've got them from. Right. Some people believe that it's haunted by the peasants who were there a long time ago. I guess there were peasants who were murdered back in the day in that area a long time ago, and that they say that this settlement dates back to like 6500 BC.
Oh wow!
And that these people were killed. I couldn't find out why or how, but that their ghosts are trapped in that forest, and that's where you get people say they've seen orbs, right, around trees, and ghosts, and they've heard either screams or giggles of women or men. People have said they've heard like deer or horse hooves, even though that there's nothing there.
That makes sense with it being a portal,
They've had lots of accounts of people like having faces appear right in front of them, which would freak me out, and people green glowing eyes, staring at them from a distance.
Yeah, see, that is some crazy shit.
Right now, the interesting thing about this forest is that specialists from around the world, James, have gone in here and tried to study this place, and some of them have got films of weird manifestations on film. Some of them have gotten photos. Some of them have said that they've seen things with their own eyes. this place is a trip, and they really have no explanation for all of the things that they say goes on in this forest.
Yeah, and a lot of crazy shit goes on there. I saw where one of these documentary show things went there. One of the cameramen went in that circle you were talking about, and like years later they went back and he was like still freaking out and stuff. It was crazy.
Yeah, there is like no, this forest, this it's a trip, and people today still, that's just one of the creepiest places on earth. So what I thought I would do is I thought I would just go to random bullshit. There's a ton of more creepy places, but we're running out of time, and I could go on all day because I found stuff on the last one I was going to do was going to be Madame Laveau's tomb in New Orleans, who was a voodoo priestess back in the day, and people would go up, even, you know, she really helped a lot of people. But she was such a powerful voodoo priestess that they say where she's built, her tomb, people would go there and mark X's on it because she still grants wishes today.
Yeah.
And she's at St. Louis Cemetery in New Orleans. Up until 2015, you could go and do the ritual and mark the X on her tomb. But because it was been desecrated so many times and vandalized, you can only now see the tomb by guide. So I can't really go into more detail because I don't have enough time. But if you happen to go to New Orleans and you go to that cemetery and you take the tour, that's one of the tombs they will show you. They'll also show you Nicolas Cage's pyramid. He's got a tomb there too.
He's a trip, man.
He's got a pyramid tomb there. I guess the government can seize all your property, but they cannot seize your burial plot. Just FYI. So yeah, that I thought that was kind of interesting. So, we got a couple minutes left, and so I just wanted to keep it in the Halloween and kind of go into random bullshit. So James, tell me, what scared you as a kid?
We talked about this.
I know, what scared you as a kid?
Your dad scared me as a kid, man. He did.
He was scary.
He did that. And then because I didn't see him for years and years later. And then one time we were at your house, and he come walking up the stairs, you know. And now I'm a great big grown man, you know. And I looked at him and I'm like, do you remember who I am? And he's like, no. And I'm like, God, I remember you are. I was scared of you, man.
That's funny. That's what scared you as a kid?
Yeah, that was one of the things.
You know what? You know what used to scare me as a kid? And I don't really know if I was a kid. A lot of things didn't scare me, but one thing that scared the hell out of me was the movie The Exorcist. That shit scared the hell out of me. When I was a kid, I remember watching that for the first time and just simply not being able to sleep. That scared me. And I don't know if I was necessarily scared of the dark, but horror movies would make me afraid of the dark. So I wasn't afraid of the dark all the time, just when you would see that scary horror movie that would make you afraid of the dark, right?
But there's scary shit in the dark, man.
There is scary shit in the dark. So we want to find out what you guys think, what scared you as a kid. So we thought we would do another contest. So we did one last week. We asked you to go onto social media and either like us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and we would give you a sample spice set from Chef Bella B, who makes her own spices. And our winner last week was Josie Ortiz Gallegos. Congratulations.
Woo-hoo.
We will reach out to you and we will make sure that you get your spice pack. So this week, we want to find out what scared you as a kid. What was it? Was it something in the closet? Was it something under the bed? What scared you as a kid? For James, it was my dad.
It was
so
Kelly's dad.
what scared you? So we're going to post on Instagram and Facebook. We want you to like us, comment, tell us what scared you, and tag 3 friends. And then what we'll do is we will put you into a random drawing, and the winner will be announced next week. And the prize is a free spice pack along with a spice grinder. So like us on social media. Again, those links are, if you're looking at Instagram, it's at that's_some crazy shit. On Facebook, it's K&J's crazy shit. On Twitter, it's at that's some crazy shit. And then, if you want to, if you're not into social media, you can even send us an email because we'll accept that too. And that's some crazy shit podcast @gmail.com. So like us, comment, tag 3 friends, win a spice pack and a grinder. And if you're like, well, what's a spice pack? Go look at Chef Bella B's website, which is www.chefbellabkitchen.com. That's where she has all her spices. And I believe the 3 that you would be winning would be a veggie and potato spice, a taco spice, and a poultry and seafood spice, and then a little grinder to grind up your own spices.
And that's what packet I got.
So next week, James, we're doing ghost tarot card readers.
And I'm going to have a guest that will talk to us about seeing spirits.
Really?
So stay tuned.
Ooh, that sounds exciting. We're going to have a ghost that sees spirits.
Not a ghost.
Oh.
A person.
You know what I meant. Not a ghost
know.
that sees spirits. A person that sees ghosts or sees spirits.
There you go.
Thank you. I just needed a little help.
That's okay.
So thank you again for joining us on That's Some Crazy Shit. I am Kelly.
And I'm James.
And this has been That's Some Crazy Shit.
Until next time, keep your mind open.
Bye.